Hello everyone, welcome to this channel. This is What If Deku Had a Nature Quirk Part 1. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you. After the first recorded occurrence of supernatural powers in China, more and more cases appeared one after another. Before the world knew it, the supernatural became the completely normal. The world had later become a superhuman society, with about 80% of the world's population now having some kind of special trait called quirks. Quirks are inherited genetically through what appeared to be Mendelian inheritance and typically manifest in children by the age of 4 at the latest. Children will either manifest one of their parents' quirks or a new composite quirk formed by the fusion of the two. The dawn of this extraordinary era, this next step in evolution, was marred by a breakdown of society caused by the sudden onslaught of criminals empowered by their newfound abilities. However, as chaos and unrest ensued due to the outbreak of quirks, ordinary civilians with their own quirks decided to take matters into their own hands to bring order to society. Because of this, the first heroes appeared in the form of vigilantes, thus beginning the vigilantes era. As society adapted to the new status quo, the police force moved to prioritize leadership and to maintain the status quo, and as such, decided not to use quirks as weapons. To fill that void, the profession of crime-fighting quirk users, pro-heroes, began to exist, which caused the vigilantes to slowly disappear. Pro-heroes are individuals who use their quirks to protect civilians from villains or natural disasters. A natural disaster is a major adverse event resulting from natural processes of the earth. Examples are floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other geologic processes. A natural disaster can cause loss of life or damage property, and typically leave some economic damage in its wake, the severity of which depends on the affected population's resilience and also on the infrastructure available. Heroes once believed that natural disasters would be the least of their worries due to how rarely they happen, but something began to throw a wrench into that state of mind. And when people in this day and age try to discern the causes of such strange happenings, such as a sudden magnitude 3 earthquake that occurred all those years ago, they tend to write it off as a very powerful quirk being the cause. They tend to be right. Izuku Midoriya sat at the waiting room of the hospital, waiting for any kind sign that his mother was alive and well. The white walls closing in on all sides as he dreaded the fate of his dearest mother. It had all happened in such a short amount of time, Izuku's young mind could barely keep up. "Mom! I am scared," whimpered the voice of 5-year-old Izuku Midoriya, his mother clinging to him for dear life. Smoke and ash filled the nighttime air, buildings and market stalls burned around them as a large man, wreathed in flame, charged at another man who held a purse in his hands. The other man's eyes were bulging out of his skull, terrified beyond belief. Tears stung Izuku's emerald eyes, rolling down his freckled cheeks as he recalled the catastrophe that happened only an hour prior. "Get back here, criminal scum!" yelled the hero, his flames blazing around him as the purse snatcher whimpered in fear. The snatcher ran, afraid for his life. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him. Endeavor. A pro-hero that had gotten the number 2 spot 3 years ago, though Izuku heavily questioned Endeavor's position considering the amount of people he had just sent to the hospital. "Izuku! Stay close to me and everything will be okay," yelled Inko, Izuku's mother, as she held her baby boy in her arms, searching for a way to escape the indiscriminate onslaught from the pro-hero. Was he trying to get innocent people killed? That's not what heroes do. Civilians panicked within the blaze, with pro-heroes trying to lead them to safety, though it was hard to do that with the flames becoming worst. Inko did her best to lead Izuku to safety, but as fate would have it, the purse snatcher had slammed into her. Just behind him was a roar of anger and a wave of fire enveloping the two. "MOM!" Izuku shrieked, his mother and the snatcher screaming from within the inferno. Izuku shook his head furiously. No! His mother would be okay. She just had to be. He would see her when he became a hero himself. Please be okay. Please be okay. Please. Izuku Midoriya? Izuku looked up, seeing a young-looking doctor. Her bright pink eyes were solemn as she held a clipboard. Her hair, which was black with orange highlights at the ends, was tied back by a pink ribbon. Honestly, for Dr. Nezuko Kamado, this was probably the hardest thing she's ever had to do in her entire career. How could she tell a 5-year-old child that his mother had died, succumbing to her severe burns? Nezuko's heart broke when she had given the news to the young child, seeing him break down into a sobbing mess. People around them also felt their hearts break, and the receptionist, a woman with a lion's tail and mane, had to choke back a sob herself. No child should have to endure the loss of his mother so early in their life. Suddenly, Izuku screamed. His eyes shone white. The earth rumbled beneath them. It all went black from there. Years had passed since the tragedy that had escalated from Endeavor's chase with a minor criminal. Of course, there was no mention of it in the news for a reason Izuku could not fathom. But one thing was certain. He hated Endeavor. Izuku scowled every time that fucking bastard was mentioned, the same flaming bastard that took away his mother. The ground underneath his feet would crack and splinter while it briefly shook. Sometimes dark clouds would circle above him whenever he cursed Endeavor and every other false hero in this hero-obsessed society, and sometimes the temperature would fluctuate drastically when people praised the flaming monster and horrid excuse of a hero. But still, he wanted to be a hero. Izuku wanted to become a hero, even if his quirk was immensely destructive, which was something Katsuki Bakugo kept reminding him in order to keep him and his villainous quirk in line. Honestly, as if he and his explosions were one to talk. What can you do with a quirk like yours? You'll only cause more problems. You can't save people with an earthquake. It doesn't work like that. You're more suited to be a villain. A villain. A villain. A villain. Izuku shook the voices out of his head while also cursing his own quirk for being what it was. Izuku's quirk, which he called Ragnarok, gave Izuku the ability to create, shape and manipulate all forms of natural disasters. Meaning he creates and controls things like earthquakes, thunderstorms, floods, wildfires, etc. Of course, Izuku just had to be given the quirk that creates one of the very things that heroes have to deal with on a regular. I can't be a hero, huh? Izuku sighed, finally giving up. He didn't bother stopping to take notes on whatever commotion was going on in the streets. All of his notes, scientific formulas, diagrams and sketches for devices and gadgets were meaningless to him now. He didn't care anymore. Izuku Midoriya, his face hidden under a baggy hoodie, scowled as he watched another hero fighting another villain. The cheers of the crowds were heard, a male voice ringing loudly above everyone else. Give up, villain! I, the flying hero, Captain Celebrity, will put an end to your filthy crimes, cried the pro-hero in a form of broken Japanese. Izuku's scowl deepened. He knew who this so-called hero was and what he had done. Christopher Skyline, aka Captain Celebrity. He was extremely arrogant and a stereotypical celebrity. He only cared about his appearance and how the public viewed him. He would do anything for popularity, no matter how morally wrong it was. He only acted as a hero if the media is watching, and if they're not he would not be bothered, even if lives were on the line. He was also a well-known playboy and has had many relationships with other women, despite being married. This caused him to earn the nickname Flying Stallion. Izuku internally wretched. To commit sexual misconduct, while just the tip of the iceberg at the kinds of atrocities heroes have committed, was enough to catch his ire. Skyline's quirk, Flight, allowed him to not only give him sustained flight as the name suggested, but also to control wind currents to protect himself from external temperatures, but that would not save him. It was because of this quirk that Skyline had escaped punishment in America by traveling to their shores. Izuku's eyes glowed and the wind began to pick up. Everyone else in the area, both the villain and Skyline, looked around before someone pointed up at the sky. Dark clouds circled overhead, the crowd murmured in confusion with a trace of fear. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning, which was a bright sapphire instead of white or yellow, ripped across the heavens, a powerful crack scaring those in the area. In the crowd and Skyline's distraction, the villain managed to slip away with the precious stones that he had stolen. Hopefully, he could feed himself with these and maybe live comfortably, at least for one night. Skyline looked around. "What the hell is causing this?" he yelled in his native tongue. Another bolt of lightning struck Skyline head-on, causing him to scream in pain. The civilian screamed in terror when Skyline was severely injured to the point where he would be most likely paralyzed for life. It was only thanks to his quirk that he didn't die outright. Izuku's eyes stopped glowing and he retreated into an alleyway. Izuku grinned, "One more false hero erased from the world. You're more suited to be a villain." Izuku chuckled at that stray thought, a distant memory of the jeers from the other students. It's funny, people always create the thing they dread. Men of peace create engines of war, invaders create avengers. People create children, designed to supplant them. To help them end. JNN Live. Hello everyone. Tragedy in the form of lightning has struck when the American hero Captain Celebrity, in his efforts to bring a villain to justice, had been foiled in the attempt when a mysterious storm brewed overhead when it was supposed to be sunny for the next week. A lightning bolt had struck him head-on and, while it is fortunate that Celebrity had not been killed, he had been rendered permanently paralyzed and was no longer in any condition for hero work. The image on the screen showed Skyline, his costume torn and his skin charred in several places, being carried on a stretcher into an ambulance. Was this the work of another villain with a very dangerous weather quirk? Experts on the matter say that it is certainly a possibility that no one can ignore. Civilians are advised that they tread carefully outside and report anything suspicious. Izuku Midoriya sat on a bench in the mall, watching the news. He grinned as he admired his handiwork. One false hero, a stain on society, had been removed for the sake of a greater world. Izuku shook his head. Honestly, the people ask for saviors, and they settle for slaves. Heroes had become slaves to both the media and their own corporate backers. This had happened the instant heroism became a government-sanctioned profession, permanently becoming a part of the world's status quo and with people's quirks becoming a badge of social standing. Those with a decent quirk could become great. Those with a far too dangerous quirk become villains via discrimination. Those whose quirks were impractical either tried and failed, or they don't try at all. But the quirkless, they were simply oppressed. Deemed worthless or disabled in the eyes of society. Quirkless people usually never make it past the age of 13, succumbing to their powerlessness and simply ending themselves, believing that no one would waste their time mourning the loss of a quirkless nobody. Izuku remembered how he had a friend in Eldora, quirkless, but had the heart of a true hero. She only wanted nothing more than to preserve the lives of the innocent. She wouldn't care about fighting villains, just making sure people were okay. But Katsuki pushed her down as well. Pushed her into the mud. Izuku always wondered, what would happen when you push a person farther than they ever thought they could go? Would they snap? Of course, the girl, braver than Izuku was at the time, had snapped back at Katsuki for his scathing words and villainous behavior. Of course, that would push Katsuki's most lethal buttons. He had told her that if she wanted a quirk that badly, then she would have to believe with all her might that she would be born with a quirk in the next life, and then take a swan dive off the roof of a tall building. She had vanished the next day. But of course, no one seemed to care. That day, Izuku had summoned a wildfire and swiftly burned Eldora to the ground. That had been the starting point of Izuku's villainous crusade. The day Izuku himself had snapped. And yes, they were quick to cast the blame on Izuku, whom they believed had the only quirk capable of such destruction. They forgot just what Katsuki's quirk could do. Honestly, Izuku believed he was the only one removing the false heroes, until he saw him. Izuku, though he wasn't privy to his rather gruesome methods, had admired the way the heroes had been swiftly defeated by what the exceedingly few survivors called a lethal shadow. A dark and sinister figure that drank their blood and rendered them powerless. Izuku's grin stretched. It was a miracle that any of those few survived. But for those that didn't, he always left a message in blood. Such a macabre way to make an example of these heroes' falsehoods. The figure would write their crimes in blood, just above their heads. And with each crime shown, Izuku suppressed the need to vomit. Lying hypocrites, the lot of them. Izuku thought it was time he made a name for himself, to show the figure that he wasn't the only one fighting this war. Of all the disasters that Izuku had known, he thought a lot about meteors. The purity of them. Boom. The end. The world made clean for the new man to rebuild. You foe heroes shall be my meteor, my swift and terrible sword, and the earth will crack with the weight of your sins. Shut me out from your society, and I will simply turn your own against you, to make you reveal your falsehoods. And when the dust settles, all that is left will be the truth. Thank you everyone for watching this video to the end. If you enjoy this, please make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.